Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us for Reviewers Assemble, the MCU and Review Show. My name is Kyle, as your host, as always, joined here again by my friend Garrett, my friend Victor.
Strongest Avenger.
The strongest Avenger, we'll see. But thank you for joining us. If you watched Iron Man review, thank you so much. We had a blast doing that. We are following the trail here. We're doing Incredible Hulk in review today. So this one I don't think we're as high on, but we're going to do our best to recap it and kind of do the same segments, our best actor, actress, our weakest, our score. Kind of the same spiel as last week, but we'll kind of go through here. So yeah, so we just finished watching Incredible Hulk, so just kind of initial thoughts on that. We'll go through the recap here. Victor, I don't know if you want to start it off with the kind of the opening segment there for
Incredibles. So that opening sequence is probably the most frustrating part of this whole movie.
It's rough.
You know, if you think about the Incredible Hulk compared to Captain America, essentially it's a similar process where it's all experimental and they're trying to create, some sort of weapon long term because it's all military related. But there's like a 90-second, maybe a little longer, probably 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, whatever it is, where they're just like zooming through this long process of how Bruce Banner became the Hulk or, inherited the Hulk genes inside of him.
It's very rushed.
And if you don't know, specifically my fiance who never watched any of the old Hulk movies or knows anything about it, and maybe she picks up on some context clues, she wouldn't really know that there's gamma radiation, experimental, and it's supposed to be for the military. She would assume that it's just a guy who was born this way and this is like some superhuman kind of thing. They screwed this up, big time. And one of the things after rewatching it, we looked it up. The 03 Hulk actually goes through it with Eric Bana. They go through how he becomes the Hulk, the gamma radiation, all that stuff. But in 08, when it's supposed to be directly connected to the Marvel universe, they don't talk about it at all. Like literally within 2 minutes, 3 minutes, they missed the mark with this movie. They don't develop the character. As we go on with this, we'll see, we just watched Iron Man. The development of that was phenomenal. It was kind of a fluke thing and a tragedy that turned him into a superhero. Mm-hmm. As we go on, we'll see Captain America and all of them all develop. This was like, boom, and he gets dropped off in Brazil, and, I'll let you guys take over from there. But it's just a huge missed opportunity to show an amazing character become so big and monumental of this whole universe. They screwed it up. It's disappointing, to say the least.
Yeah, it feels like they rushed it for sure. I mean, the whole sequence, and we actually rewatched the sequence, and I don't think it provided any more clarity, really. It feels like it was thrown together last minute. There was like a sequence with Bruce where we were kind of discussing, like, what is even going on here? Like, they're doing test subjects. Bruce eventually runs away as the Hulk, and
it barely shows him as the Hulk.
That kind of opens this movie where he shows up as Bruce. But
I don't want to call it an 80s montage, but it's kind of similar to that, where they're just trying to rush through a really big part of the plot, and you're looking at it and you're like, okay, so here's a close-up on some control panels, here's a close-up on a computer, they're running some testing, and then all of a sudden he's the Hulk and he's attacking Liv Tyler, and the Colonel's in there, and he's just getting tossed around. But you're all seeing it from a first-person view of the Hulk, but you don't really know what's going on, and then it shows him as Edward Norton, and like all within 3 minutes, so it's just a ton of stuff thrown at you, and then it goes right into the story.
Yeah, and if you know nothing about the Hulk, none of that makes any sense.
No, and and I don't know a lot about the Hulk, so other than this one particular movie, because it really... Mark Ruffalo doesn't really have an origin story, it's just this.
It's just supposed to be it.
So this is the origin story, but there's no origin, it's just
a story.
Yeah, there's a Hulk.
Yeah.
He's here, the government created him, let's just pick up with him on the road. Which is a good segue into, where does it take off? Brazil?
Yeah, so 6 months later, right? What was it, 158 days?
I think 158 days is
like
days since incident, so that's a cool little effect where they have like the text show up on the screen. Yeah, he shows up in Brazil, eventually, where he's like working at a factory, and he's like making Mountain Dew basically, where he's like, I think it's called like Pico.
Yeah, it's like a soda bottling company.
Neon green soda.
Yeah, it looks pretty good, honestly. But there's like a scene where he like gets cut, and then his blood goes down in there, and he's like, stop. The scene that threw me off, he's like speaking Spanish, or he's like speaking broken Spanish, and then he says like stop, but then none of the other workers understand English, so he's like saying stop the factory. But then it's not until he actually says it like in Spanish where he goes down and they stop it.
Portuguese, they're in Brazil.
Portuguese, yeah. Sorry. He cleans up like a blood on like the tract that the bottles are going in, but then like he misses the one very obvious bottle where it's got like his blood going down.
You see him mix it in with the liquid and stuff.
And then Stanley ends up drinking, R.I.P. Stanley, he ends up drinking that, and he's like, wow, this is good. And then, I don't know if he dies. They like kind of imply that he dies.
He takes like one sip and then just drops the bottle.
Yeah, he drops it like he had a heart attack.
It shatters and just, yeah, he's dead.
And that's how he...
Instantly.
Yeah, so someone calls like the government and they're like, hey, this shit just happened, blah, blah, blah. And immediately it goes to the general. The general's like, track it down, find out where it was.
Yeah.
And that's how they end up tracking him in Brazil. But I love the Brazil scenes. We were talking about that earlier. Like, I love the little like Brazilian tough guys that kind of pick on the gringo. They call him the gringo. And like you were saying earlier, Jared, how it's cool how the boss like uses him as like an engineer, an electrician, and all that stuff. Like they see the value in him.
He realizes like this isn't just some run of the mill worker. This guy's got intelligence. He can do more around the place. He offers him another position
Corporate.
that we talked about, but he doesn't want to take it, so he can stay under the radar. I think a cool part of him also being in Brazil was when he was working with that martial arts guy to try and learn how to control his breathing, control his heart rate.
That was cool.
So he doesn't transform randomly.
Yeah, I think that guy's actually a UFC fighter or a trainer.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that scene kind of freaked me out because he's doing like a weird diaphragm thing where he's like
the vacuum.
It doesn't look natural.
Ugh, doesn't look. I don't like that kind of stuff. But
Slow his heart rate down.
That's a me problem. So yeah, but he's kind of learning to control becoming the Hulk or becoming this power that he's got. But we also learn that it's poisoning him with gamma poisoning, and so he gets like a scene where he's using like basically like AOL Instant Messenger, where he's like using a computer to message Mr. Blue.
Yeah, Mr. Blue and Mr. Green.
He's Mr. Green, of course, like a fun little play on words there, but he's like sending him samples basically, and he's saying like, hey, it's not healthy to live with gamma poisoning, and so he's like, you can't just keep going on like this forever, and so they have like a back and forth there, but yeah, eventually there's not too much that happens between that scene and kind of.
And then the general shows up with his crew.
The general shows up, which we eventually find out is Liv Tyler's dad.
Yeah, the general and I think Bruce Banner and the general's daughter Betty, they're dating. So it's a weird, complex situation where the general wants to use their scientific research to weaponize, but they're dating, but they're kind of working for the military, but they're really just scientists. Like that's the issue with this movie is they don't develop those relationships and connections at all.
No.
So again, if you've never seen the 03 Hulk or followed the comic books in the past, you have no idea what all these people are. And
right.
I mean, you didn't even know they were dating.
No idea.
And like, it's hard to tell. Like they hold hands at one point. I think he might kiss her hand or kiss her on the cheek or something. Like that could just be a close friend, like an old colleague that you spent years together. It's poorly developed. It's depressing.
Yeah, I would say so. And there's an opening sequence where, Edward Norton goes to see Liv Tyler's character Betty in the hospital, but then like the general kind of kicks him out there, like you said, Victor, kind of like he's aware of his power and he doesn't want to kind of endanger his daughter with that, so he kicks him out and basically says they're no good for each other. But basically this whole movie is like Edward Norton trying to cure himself of the Hulk disease, for lack of a better word, or the gamma poisoning, where he's got this power, and he's kind of going back and forth with Mr. Blue, and then he's also in touch with Liv Tyler's character, who's Betty Ross, and then he eventually goes to like see her at Culver University, which is like kind of a creepy scene, I thought, where he's like hiding behind a tree, and like he's like looking at her, and then like Ty Burrell's character from Modern Family comes in. Yeah. And so he's like kind of in love with her, but then like he realizes that she's with someone else, so then he like just like hides behind. First of all, a tree cover has never been a good cover for
anybody.
Like a tree doesn't hide you ever, because you can just see the other side of it. But he's like hiding behind there, he's being kind of creepy, and then he eventually sees that she's with someone else. He goes to see Stanley's, which is like I think a play on Stan Lee. the restaurant where there's like this old dude with a mustache.
Yeah, they're clearly close, friends or.
He gives him like a room. Like he says, you can take the spare bedroom.
Yeah.
Because Edward Norton is like down on his luck, and he has like no money in this movie. He's basically like a bum with the Hulk powers.
Just on the run.
Yeah, he's on the run. He's
Trying
like a
to avoid
fugitive.
the government.
So he, like the old guy with the mustache. Sorry, I forget his name. I don't know if
Stanley. I think it's just Stanley, like one word.
Oh, Stanley, yeah.
Stanley.
Stanley. He owns the restaurant. He like offers him the spare room for a little bit, and he stays there for a bit. But eventually, we get to like this scene on Culver University, the big open scene, which is like kind of one of the bigger scenes in this movie where. They trap Edward Norton and they throw like a couple of like tear gas canisters in there, and he's like, "Oh, we got him trapped." And then I think the dad actually says like, "This is where she'll see." This is like where Liv Tyler's character finally realizes like, "Oh, he is the Hulk." Like,
how dangerous he is.
Yeah, how dangerous he is. He's not this gentle giant. Like he actually turns into the Hulk and becomes this like indestructible force. So there's a great scene where they throw the canisters in there, and he's like in like a. Almost reminds me of like the Harry Potter bridge. I can't think of like the name.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
It's that overhead
glass.
bridge. Yeah, where they lock both doors. He can't get out, and they throw the canisters in, and there's like a great shot of him like sliding his hand down. He turns into the Hulk, and he like bursts out of that.
Yeah.
And then like they're doing everything they can. The government's doing everything they can to take him down. Where they bring in like the 50 cal, and they bring in like the different weapons, and then they eventually bring in like these sonic boom, like this high frequency.
Yeah, and he takes like a car
couple
door
of car
or something,
doors.
and he launches it at one of them and like cuts it in half.
Yeah.
And then the other one he uses as a shield and like walks through it. I can't remember if he like.
I think he throws it at both. It works for a little bit where it kind of holds down the Hulk, but then he just takes the car doors, and he throws it at him and like cuts
it. Cuts one in half, and then the other one he uses as like a shield and walks towards it.
Yeah.
And then like.
And smashes it.
Yeah, something crazy. But then that's where the scene gets a little weird because you can see the complexity between the dad, the general, the girlfriend in Betty, and then the Hulk himself, where they're attacking the Hulk, but Betty's like, no, that's also my boyfriend, not just the Hulk. She wants to like protect him. She gets caught in the crossfire, and the Hulk actually protects her. And I remember, I forget what it was. What blows up? I think the helicopter or something
crashes.
Oh yeah. He throws like I think he might have thrown one of the shields. He throws the helicopter. The helicopter like does nothing, where it comes and shoots at him, and then he just throws at him. But when he sees the helicopter crashing, he
covers Betty.
He shields Betty, and then like there's fire all around them, and it's actually a pretty cool scene where like the helicopter comes crashing down and it like goes by them, but he shields her from the blast. She like ends up knocked out because he carries her out,
but then
like a firefighter almost.
He looks up with like those Hulk eyes, like grilling her, or grilling the general.
Yeah.
All pissed off, like, look what you just did.
Yeah.
Like it gets a little complex there, and I mean. Some of the fight scenes are probably the highlights of this movie. Yeah. I mean, it's not the best Hulk, but some of the effects are pretty good. That scene was cool.
It didn't look as bad as I thought it would look. I mean, this is a movie from 2008, and we just watched Iron Man last week, so like Iron Man holds up and it looks great. It's weird to think that this movie came out a month after.
Yeah.
This like I remember because I actually worked at the movie theater at the time. Where like Iron Man and Hulk were in theaters at the same time. Where like you could see Iron Man in theater 1 and see Hulk in theater 2, and it's really weird to think that these are the two MCU movies connected. But this movie, I kept forgetting that it's a 2008 movie because it felt like an 2003, or it felt very primitive. Yeah. Where like between the effects and the acting, like it just didn't feel like it came out at the same time as Iron Man, which feels like a masterpiece in a way.
And if we talk about like the acting is terrible. Across the board, I'd have to say it's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad.
But if you look at like the directing, and we talked about this, I looked up who the director was, and I forget his name. He's lucky he got another chance like this to get a script like Now You See Me. And we talked about, I think, the general consensus of Now You See Me. It's a pretty good movie.
It's a good movie. Now
so
You See Me.
He did a great job on that movie. So I'm glad that. After a big miss on the Hulk, he got a second chance. You can lose your career pretty quickly in Hollywood.
He learned from his mistakes.
Yeah, he learned from his mistakes and did a better job. Clearly, that this kind of movie is not for him.
Yeah.
But he did a better job with Now You See Me. But he clearly struggled with this movie. I mean, it's not even. I'm almost glad that they replaced Edward Norton, not just because of Edward Norton, but to kind of reset the Hulk mindset. going into the future.
To reboot it almost.
Yeah, because
it just didn't work really.
Even though, and we noticed after we rewatched it, in that beginning credits, and I missed as we went over it, it talks about Howard Stark, Stark Industries, talks about Nick Fury. It actually hints at Nick Fury later on, Howard Stark later on. It is supposed to be tied in
the same universe.
They just missed the mark.
It just doesn't feel like it.
That's why they reset and they didn't use the Hulk again until the Avengers.
They scrapped it. They were like,
Literally.
forget about this for now. Let's see if we can erase that from people's memories and try again later.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think we've talked about the villain of this movie so far.
Blonsky slash
him up yet.
Abomination.
Yeah, right. Slash Abomination.
Yeah, great name.
Power hungry fiend. But yeah, I mean, he in that scene that we were just talking about in the college campus, where he's already been speaking about Stark Industries, where he's already been injected with
super serum,
like basically
same stuff they use like Captain America.
Captain America 2 is basically what he is, and ends up getting kicked by Hulk and just destroyed
into a tree.
So if you think about that, like in hindsight, like
Dude,
in the Avengers, like could Hulk just kill Captain America at any point? Like, I'm just gonna bring that up now. Like, let's.
The only difference was there was, if you, and we don't want to flash forward too much, but Captain America, he's in that like little, like enclosure. It almost looks like a coffin type thing, and it looks like he's getting gamma radiation or something like that.
When he gets the serum.
When he's getting the serum. Where in this he just got like injection. It was 2. I think they like the.
It's probably not as concentrated.
Yeah, so it wasn't as much as Captain America, but you're right. Like, could the Hulk destroy Captain America like that? I don't know.
He came at him and just one kick and he hit a tree and he's just done. And so, but yeah, like
I can't believe that guy didn't die in that.
I know.
But I think that's the super serum working. I think a normal human would have died from that, and then I think the super serum speaks to its effects. It kept him alive. Because they show a hospital scene after that where like he like can barely move. He's like can barely move his hands, and then he like makes a fist. But then like a week later, he's like fine. And so that's like the super serum working, where it's like a normal human would have been done from this, probably paralyzed for life, and he's just good like the next week, and he's like I'm ready for round 3 or whatever he says.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think we spent a lot of time on on kind of the opening sequences here, but basically this movie is strange where it kind of almost goes into different acts where it's like the opening sequence, the Culver University scene in the open field, which is I think like the one I remember the most because like that's
probably the best fight scene or action scene of the whole movie.
It's good with the sonic boom kind of.
Which was a Howard Stark thing. They referenced at the beginning,
Yep. Whatever those are called, sonic boom, we'll just call them. That's kind of a cool scene. And then eventually, like Hulk runs away. He like shields Liv Tyler's character in like the rain. There's like a thunder scene where it's kind of cool, but he like yells into the thunder. I don't know. A lot of this movie, honestly, is just kind of like a blur to me. And I just watched it like 2 days ago and like rewatched parts of it. And like I don't know if you guys felt the same, but it's. I don't know.
It's not memorable.
It's just like a run of the mill action movie. Like it's like a blur where like a lot of the scenes mold together. It doesn't feel like an MCU movie at all to me. Or like compared to what we're going to get.
Yeah.
I don't know. A lot of it just blurred together for me. So like we don't want to spend too much time on the plot, but I also don't feel like there's way too much to recap here.
No, I mean we can honestly jump right into him finally meeting with Mr. Blue. Which, if we flash back a little bit, so they were having conversations while Mr. Green was still in Brazil, and then they're talking. He says, "I need a blood sample," so he sends him the blood sample. Which, the Hulk in Brazil doesn't have all the resources that Mr. Blue has, where he's at like a college campus and has all the resources he needs, and he studies gamma radiation as well. So it's he's the right guy to talk to. So he eventually starts running some tests. And then, when he finally gets stateside back here, he goes to visit him, and things kind of go a little south. I mean, he tried the antidote, and what you quoted, he said that he needs to do like a series of it, right?
Like more, yeah. It's like they need to test it and see how much he would need to kind of reduce the amount of
effects.
Yeah, I don't even know what I'm looking for. Yeah, that's just how vague this movie is.
Correct me if I'm wrong. how the hell did they find him there? I don't think they
Mr. Blue?
no. How did they find Bruce and Mr. Blue there? They tracked him. There was no insight as to how they
there's
found
a
him.
lot of lapses, and there's also a lapse in how did he find Mr. Blue? How did he get that encrypted passcode to chat with him while he's in Brazil? They
that's
must
weird.
have, because when they first meet, he has no idea, and he sees him face to face, and he's like, "Oh, Mr. Green,
is that you?
I've never met you before."
Yeah.
So it's it doesn't seem like there was a past relationship. So I'm like, okay, so how do you go from not having any relationship at all to, all right, I need to talk to some, gamma radiation scientist, and I know this guy, so I'm just gonna talk to him through encrypted chat. So many
This is one of those movies that
missing
needed
plot
to
points.
break the 2 hour if they wanted to develop it properly. And
Yeah,
just to.
it
And
just
they
all
did
feels
it.
very rushed. I
Yeah.
mean, from start to finish, really. I mean, from the opening sequence, it just feels like they threw a bunch of stuff together, and this is an action movie, and this is a Hulk origin story, but it's really just kind of like a action movie that's smashed together, and it's too bad because I feel like we deserve a proper Hulk sequel, not a sequel, but
They
an
should
origin
prequel
story.
it.
They should, and obviously it's we from here on we get Mark Ruffalo. This is the only Hulk movie with Edward Norton, so it's an origin story, but it's not even the same character who plays him the rest of the series. So we all know the Hulk is Mark Ruffalo, and I think we're all fond of Mark Ruffalo's performance. So not that Edward Norton does a bad job in this movie, but he just doesn't bring the same kind of energy as Mark Ruffalo does.
It's kind of like the Terrence Howard thing. We can't truly say that he would have done a bad job because this movie in general just sucks.
Yeah, just poor direction, and just everything just feels so rushed. And I feel like watching this movie, I felt like they didn't know what kind of movie they wanted to be.
No idea.
Where sometimes they wanted to be an action movie, almost like a war movie sometimes. There's these threads between Bruce and Liv Tyler's character Betty, where they're building this love connection. Where it's is this a romantic movie? Is it I feel like they were just blending so many things together, and they rushed all of it. Where I feel like whenever I would be interested in something, they would just move on to the next thing, or they wouldn't expand enough on something, and I just felt I was how do we get here? How do we get here? And that kind of speaks to towards the end of this movie where he's fighting Abomination, who is Blonsky, who I think.
So let's go back to that. So Mr. Green's with Mr. Blue, takes the antidote, right?
Yep.
And then Blonsky and the general and everyone kind of rushes them, and Blonsky just goes rogue immediately, and he's just he knocks out the other soldier. They drink Bruce Banner, and for some reason that doesn't that's another part that was stupid. That tranquilizer on Mark Ruffalo, future Hulk, he's pulls it out, and he's and turns into Hulk immediately. But in this one, it actually knocks him down, and he gets handcuffed.
Yep.
And that could be because he's practicing
You may not have
heart rate or whatever,
controlled it as much.
or maybe the antidote was kind of slowing it down. I don't know. That part was a little weird.
I think it was because we won't jump into it, but later they throw him out of a plane, and he thought he was pissed off in mid-flight, and your heart rate's gonna go through the roof when you just got thrown out of a plane.
Yeah.
And he didn't transform, and so I think that was he was having trouble at that point turning back into Hulk, which probably had something to do with whatever Mr. Blue had given him.
A little Ragnarok reference right there, I think.
I think the one thing this movie does do a good job of is showing Edward Norton or Bruce Banner's struggle with controlling his power.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that actually excels at, where the opening scene where he's doing the exercising, where he's trying to control his power, and then there's a scene where he says he doesn't want to control, he wants to get rid of it, but I think he learns to live with it, and like you said, he kind of wants to control it better. The heart rate is a big thing, where he's hooking up with Liv Tyler at one point, and they're he's I can't hook up anymore because my heart rate is going.
Yeah.
He's I literally can't. I'm going to turn into Hulk. So
You're right. That's probably the best connection to Edward Norton and Mark Ruffalo later on, because that's all of Ruffalo's things. Ruffalo starts off in hiding in the Avengers, and he talks about how no, I don't want to get mad, and I remember, and we don't want to flash forward too much, but in the Avengers, Tony Stark like zaps him,
Yeah.
and he's like, no, I'm cool. And he's like, it'll take more than that
Yeah.
to set me off.
Yeah.
So you're right. Like that's probably the best reaction from Norton's character to Ruffalo's. But so in that scene in the lab, he gets the antidote. Blonsky comes in as the soldier. He's got a little bit of the serum in him, and he basically takes over from there, and he goes rogue. And
He gets power hungry.
yeah, and that's where he goes Mr. Blue, and he's like, give me what I want, or you're dead. And he does, and that's
Mr. Blue says, "I don't know what's in you already."
Yeah,
He's like, I don't know how
this
this is gonna work. It's
Yeah.
not gonna be like Bruce's thing. And he's like, I don't care, just inject me. And yeah, that's where we talked about it when we watched the scene where he just injects him, and he just like immediately turns to like kind of the Hulk, but then right to Abomination because like it's mixing with like what's already in him, and he's just kind of like, dude, I warned you, like I told you, I don't know what's in you, and now you've become Abomination.
Yeah, and Gary, you touched on it a little bit earlier. That scene was awful.
Oh, yeah.
Like the experiment itself was like,
It just 1 second he's like, just make me a godlike creature, and then the guy's like, okay, and then they show him like typing something in on a computer, and then before you know it, this guy's mutating into the Abomination.
He's fully transformed.
There's no
seconds.
sound effects, there's no visual, there's no
Yeah.
reaction, there's no nothing. It's just, all right, I'll give you what you want, and oh, here's Abomination.
yeah, he goes from 5'9" to 10'6" with spikes coming out of his back in like 3
Very
seconds. Like, what the hell just
No
happened?
transition, just
Another missed
awful.
scene. So that's basically the ending right there. The ending scenes or fight scenes is.
They have a big fight. Yeah, I know we said before we started recording that we don't want to spend too much time on the plot. I feel like we've already spent too much time on the plot,
That's
but yeah, it's alright.
We'll cut some of this out. You people don't want to see too much Hulk.
It's true.
The movie or the review.
Yeah, literally.
That's true. Yeah. No. But yeah, I think to your point, jumping ahead here, because I don't think when I say jumping ahead, I don't think we're really missing much. Yeah, basically the big end scene is the Hulk versus Abomination, and Abomination is kind of wreaking havoc. And they're like, oh no, who can stop Abomination? And they're like, oh, maybe it's Edward, maybe it's the Hulk. And
Yeah, and at that time the general did have Edward Norton or Bruce Banner in handcuffs
With
in a
him.
helicopter, which makes no sense. Because if you piss him off, he's going to destroy the helicopter, everyone dies. But
Yeah.
whatever, another missed part of that movie. And we'll talk about the general later when we talk about Baby Arms and the worst actor of this movie.
Spoilers.
Yeah, spoiler. But yeah, so they see that Abomination has taken over the city, and Bruce Banner's like, "You need to let me go."
He's the only chance they have.
Yeah, and the general's like, he like doesn't say. I don't even think he says a word. He just looks at him.
Yep.
Literally just looks at him, and then they like let him jump out the back door.
But he doesn't know if he's going to change because they've kind of cured him, and this is where the movie gets like blurry again, where it's like, was he cured of the Hulk? Does he know how to control it? But like he's like, I need to take this chance, and they're like, I think Liv Tyler was like, well, what if you don't change? Like she's like, you can't take that chance, and he's like, yes, I can, or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, so then there's like this like suspenseful scene where he drops into the ground, and you're like, did Edward Norton just die, or did Bruce just die? And it's like, no, he changed into the Hulk. We just wanted to make you think that he died for a second.
Yeah, it was terrible.
So because he like Hulk punches through, but yeah, they have like this big fight scene. I think it's like pretty uneventful, honestly. It's just like two. I mean, like
Two
almost
Goliaths just
like Godzilla, but worse, where it's like
Pummeling
just
each
two
other.
giant monsters fighting each other.
But I mean, and I don't even want to recap. I just want to kind of shit on it a little bit. Like, how about the collapse scene when the helicopter starts to explode? You talked about the foreshadowing.
Yep.
So the helicopter,
Gas leaking out.
the gas leaking. It says like explosive. What does it say?
yeah. Oh god.
Beware of blast.
Beware of blast on a helicopter. Like what is that? Just
Why would that even
explosive.
say it?
Yeah.
The thing lights on fire from sparks coming, whatever, and Hulk's like, boom, and it blows wind at it and it puts the fire out. Like it
His
is
clap just like created like a sonic force
of wind and it blows the fire
Extinguish
out.
the fire.
Like,
Yeah,
come
we're like,
on.
alright.
Yeah, I mean this movie misses the mark so much.
He like Hulk smashes the ground, and then like Abomination like loses
Oh,
the chain
sorry,
because
loses
his
the
foot
chain.
is like stuck in the ground, so he like loses grip of the chain, and then he takes the chain and like chokes him out, and we're like, that all right.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that pisses me off. So Betty comes running out and she's like stop, because she doesn't want him to be like stereotyped as a monster, murder, whatever. So he stops. This dude has Hulk power serum in him. What happens now?
And he's already killed what looked like a bunch of people.
Whole bunch of
She's like, stop, don't kill him. It's like, well, if he doesn't, who the hell is
So what happened to Abomination?
all the cops with a gun?
Yeah.
Because you know you can't detain the
He's
Hulk.
the only force that can detain Abomination.
Yeah, and so we just leave Abomination breathing on the ground. Well, what happens when he
He's
recovers?
gonna wreck everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This movie sucks.
Another thing with
Agreed.
that is, did they even show what happened to Abomination? Like, did the guy transform back?
No, that's what I'm saying.
I don't know.
They leave him
What
laying on the
happened
ground.
to Abomination? Like,
They're like, we're
Nothing.
cool now.
Yeah.
we don't know if he's dead. They didn't answer that.
Yeah. So
I don't think he died. Yeah, but they don't. It's
But
true.
they
They
didn't
don't.
show him transforming back.
Does he
Is
trans-
stuck
Is
in
he
that
permanent?
form?
Yeah, exactly.
No, they just
Where is he?
exactly. So they show the Hulk look into Betty's eyes because they are lovers, and I do like that part because it in future movies, Bruce Banner shows some humanity or whatever as the Hulk. Like he shows a little more comfort with Scarlett Jo in
Yeah.
the future.
But that's a whole different character.
Of course, but I'm just saying the little
But
connections
he's got
there.
that. Yeah.
He starts to show that like humanity. I don't know if that's the right
He's
word.
not
or
just a
affection,
monster.
compassion. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then he runs away because the helicopter shows up and he panics,
Hulk's
and then he pops up in another country like restarting. And that, do you remember how that ends?
We just watched it, but I honestly
No,
forgot.
I mean I can keep going.
Shoot. Yeah.
So he's practicing like his breathing techniques, and he's doing what the hell is it called? He's meditating again.
Oh yeah.
But now he's practicing how to turn on the Hulk.
Yeah. He's
Which is
controlling because the
sick.
movie ends with him, the vignette of him like turning green eyes. And that's actually
See,
cool
that's
stuff.
probably the best little like 5-second scene of the whole movie because he
he-
finally learned how to.
Because he's
control
like, I
it.
know when to turn it on. Yeah.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of the Mark Ruffalo scene later on when he's like that's the trick. I'm always angry or something
Oh,
like that.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I forget what movie it is or which one.
I
But
think
like,
it's in. I don't know if it's Avengers, but yeah, that's how do you figure it out? Yeah, because that's kind of the question, the like never-ending question with the Hulk is like, hey, how did you figure out how to do that? And like they ask him that, and then yeah, he says like, I'm always angry. Or,
yeah.
I think it's in Avengers or it's one of the other movies, but yeah, we'll get to that point.
So I mean that's pretty much it. I don't think we need to recap much more about this.
That's pretty much
Let-
the movie.
Let's rate this shit show of a movie and.
Well, I think we should first do. So we'll do Strongest Avenger, which is like our segment for who we thought stood out, actor, actress in this movie, and
Yep.
then Baby Arms, which we thought was the weakest performance. Then we'll score it. So yeah, for Strongest Avenger, I guess I'll just go first. I mean, this is hard to choose honestly because I don't think anyone really stood out. I don't know. I mean.
You want me to go?
Yeah, you go first.
I mean, part of me wants to say the Brazilian guy in the favela who kind of bullies Bruce Banner, but that he's too small of a character.
Side character.
Honestly, I liked Blonsky. I liked his development, how he was he looked like a badass. He's been in the military for 20 plus years. Like he looked like a good like assassin type soldier. And then you see him slowly unravel. He's got the serum in him. He's sweating. He looks like a mess. I like Blonsky. I don't like Abomination later on, but I do like Blonsky. He looks like a badass, and he's like you can see him tracking in Brazil. Like I like Blonsky. Edward Norton was okay in this movie. It's just so hard to compare him to Ruffalo, so that's why I can't make him the best actor in this movie. But I like Blonsky. I thought he was a good villain. I hated Abomination, but as he grew into the villain, I like Blonsky overall.
Yeah, Blonsky it is. He's just probably the deepest character in this. Like, there's the most depth to who he is.
They actually
and, like,
show how he
a
becomes what he
character
is.
development, and Edward Norton did a fine job acting, but he's not. He doesn't have any comedic relief. He's very serious. He's constantly just having to carry the movie because there's not a lot of characters in this movie at all, and so it's just him.
Dead weight on his shoulders.
Yep, carrying this entire film, and he did the best he could with it. But Blonsky at least had some character development and changed over the course of from the beginning of this movie in Brazil till the end, and I think I'd have to go with him.
I'm gonna go just to kind of switch it up a little bit. I'm gonna go with Liv Tyler's character Betty. I don't really like Liv Tyler, to be honest with you. So it was hard for me to pick this, but
What's wrong with you?
um,
I told you.
Yeah.
What did I say earlier?
you liked Armageddon.
She stole my heart in Armageddon, man.
She's yep. Liv Tyler, I don't know. She's always kind of off for me, but Blonsky's I think is a good choice. But for me, it's Liv Tyler because I actually did believe like the chemistry between Edward Norton and Liv Tyler. The only thing I thought was kind of weird, I felt kind of bad for Ty Burrell because he just like she's like in love with this dude apparently, and then as soon as Edward Norton shows up, she's like, oh, it's Bruce, and like it's all about their relationship, and I'm like, okay, well, but what about this dude who you've been like in love with for all these months or years or however long they've been together? They don't explore that, of course, because he's in like 2 scenes. But I thought she did a good job of bringing like she was always kind of like the she kind of brought Bruce back to humanity, and she kind of, I mean, anytime like Bruce, even when they're trying to get the cure, she like gets on top of Bruce and says like, Bruce, it's me, like it's Betty. And so like she always brought him back, I think, from like him turning into the Hulk, and I just thought they had the best chemistry, and I think Liv Tyler does a good job, even though I don't really like her as an actress too much. No offense to her, but I thought she was
solid.
There weren't really any like performances that stood out for me. I think other maybe Blonsky, but I think Liv probably did the best job in this role here.
I agree.
So for Baby Arms,
which is the weakest or worst?
The weakest one. Baby Arms is our weakest award here. I think it's got to be the General Ross. I think.
General Ross.
General Ross. He just seems like a very flat character, very like straightforward. Like, I'm the general, and it's war and it's tactics and it's all this, and it's like it's never any other like. I mean, he's like Liv Tyler's father, but we don't really like. He doesn't show any sense of like being a good dad or protecting her or anything. I mean, he puts her in harm's way most of the time. It's the Hulk who saves her character most of the time. I just don't think he really he's like very one-dimensional, I think, and I don't think he really brings much to the table. I think he's probably the weakest out of all the like 5 characters that are in this movie.
Yeah, and I'm on the same page as Kyle. The General's terrible, and I feel bad because I actually really like him as an actor. I can't think of his name, but he's in Grace and Frankie. I don't know if you guys watched that Netflix series, but I really like him. He plays the boyfriend in it, and he's great in that. He's great in a bunch of movies. But in this specific movie, I don't know if it's the acting or the directing or the script itself, but the scene in the helicopter when they have Bruce Banner in handcuffs, and someone calls up and says, "Sir, like the Hulk's down here destroying things," because the soldiers are confused. Field soldiers don't know highly classified stuff. He's like, "Get it together, soldier. That can't be true." And then like within a split second, he's like, "Get out of there, soldier!" It's like literally in a split second, he went from like grow up, there's nothing going on, to like run for your life.
Yeah.
It's just, I feel bad because I don't know if it's directly the acting, but his role, the script behind it was terrible. I feel like when we shit on Pepper about Iron Man, it like wasn't really Pepper's acting, it was more of the role and the script, and I feel like it's the same thing here, but it was terrible. He goes from hard ass to like, "I love you, daughter," like get out of here. He was awful. I'm glad they didn't keep him around. He's probably serving life in prison, who knows, but I'm glad he disappeared from this series.
Yeah, I'll agree. I mean, I don't think we need to talk much more about it. He was the weakest link, the Colonel, and I think his only probably good scene was at the very end with Tony Stark in the bar.
100%. I was just saying that might be the best part of the movie.
That's really it. It's just, he has a good moment right there, but at the end of it, some of this other stuff doesn't make sense. You can't get a read on how he feels about his daughter. You can't get a read on how he feels about the Hulk. Like, clearly he wants to capture him, but it's also like he knows it's a human being that's not dangerous. But it just, you don't know where his head's at. You don't know what he wants or how he's going to go about it. It's just kind of a confusing character, and I think that's just how it was written for him. So,
have you guys seen? Is it Outbreak? Is that what it's called, with Morgan Freeman?
Yeah, and
is it Outbreak? Is that what it is?
Yeah, with oh shoot, I'm forgetting his name.
Great movie with the monkey and the virus goes wild. Yeah, Dustin Hoffman.
Dustin Hoffman. Yep.
Yes. Have you seen that, John?
No.
So Morgan Freeman's a high up general or whatever, but every decision he makes, he has to consult with other military personnel or whatever. This is highly classified. Why is the general he doesn't call the president or the White House or anyone like that as he's dealing with someone that can destroy the world. And, you know what I mean?
He's
It's
like
just
a personal crusade against the Hulk. He's like, I'm just gonna use the United States military to fight this Hulk without getting
exactly
any other people involved.
And when he gets Blonsky recruited, because you just said that, someone was like, I got you the best I could in short notice, and like, here's the crew and here's Blonsky, blah blah blah. It's like, why is he recruiting all these people to go after his daughter's lover, boyfriend, whatever? It's ridiculous.
Who at that point he doesn't know where he is, and he like isn't doing anything wrong. It's like the guy's harmless at this point. There hasn't been any incidents. He's just
They just
like,
want to weaponize
I
what
want
he
to just weaponize this
yeah.
thing.
It's terrible.
Yeah. All right. So for scores, I think this is a tough one for me because like looking back on it, I didn't hate it as much as I thought I was going to hate it, but I definitely did not enjoy it, and like it's got a lot of flaws.
You want to score and rank it behind Iron Man?
Yeah. So for scores, I think like a 6.3 is what I'm going to put it. I think that's even maybe a generous score. I feel like all of the MCU movies, I feel like I can go back and rewatch and have a good time. This one, I feel like it's the one I would not like. I'm pretty much only watching it because we're doing the review on it. But like, I wouldn't like willingly go back and watch this movie on my own time. Like, so a 6.3, I think. This movie doesn't really know what it wants to be. Where it's sometimes like an action movie, sometimes like I don't even want to say like a rom-com, but like they introduce romantic elements here. Sometimes it's like it's trying to be too serious. I don't know. It just feels like this movie doesn't really know what it wants to be or what it strives for. Sometimes they try and put comedic bits in there, but I don't think there's really that many funny moments at all in there. So I think a 6.3 is like, it's like a passable movie, I guess, but I think for me at least, definitely like the low point of the MCU, and like I would not watch this again on my own. So I don't know. A 6.3 is like a generous score that I would give it.
I was right around there. I was gonna go 6.6. Wow, there's nothing exciting about it. You get a couple meaningless action scenes that might give you some entertainment, but the storyline isn't gonna hook you. The characters aren't gonna drive the story. It's just mindless, big Hulk action, Hulk smash like 2 or 3 times in the movie, and that's really the only fun parts, and it's not even that fun. So 6.6, I probably will never watch it again in my life. So that's really how I feel about Incredible Hulk.
Yeah. So I mean, Iron Man 1, I think I'd give it an 8.4, an 8.5, something like that. And knowing that other movies in the future are going to drop below Iron Man 1, I don't think I can put this too close to that, because this is most likely the worst movie, by far. So I need to put some gap in there. I'm going to give it 5.1. And that's an aggressive, mean rating. But I'm sorry, it misses the mark on so many points. I actually liked the 03 Eric Bana one. It has no direct connection to the Marvel Universe exactly. Even though Lou Ferrigno did a name drop that, the original Incredible Hulk.
He's in this movie.
He is in this movie. He's in the 03 one with Eric Bana.
He takes the medium pizza, and that's a good deal. So I would take
absolutely.
that deal as well.
I gotta name drop him. But, the 03 one is actually better than the 08 one, and that drives me crazy. And you can tell there's a clear disconnect with the Marvel Universe. That's why they drop all those characters. I mean, they don't even introduce Betty. Incredible Hulk has a crush on Scarlet Jo the rest of the way out. And the General never comes back into it. So clearly Stan Lee and the rest of the directors and producers know, let's try to just make this thing disappear. Unfortunately, you made us do it, even though we don't want to include it, but we had to. 5.1. It's definitely number 2 behind Iron Man so far, and it will be number 23, 24, whatever it is, when we get to it. But it missed the mark for such a great character. We're fortunate that Mark Ruffalo takes over and Bruce Banner becomes a phenomenal character going forward. But yeah, 5.1.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Had to be aggressive, man.
Yeah. No, but I don't think it's
I thought I
aggressive.
was setting the mark that low, but then I was like, you know what? It was better than I thought, so I'll keep
Doesn't
it.
mean it's good.
My rating is like 7 and above is good, 8s are great, 9s are life changing, and then 6s are just. If you're below that 7 mark, it's just average to forgettable.
I'm just an asshole.
Yeah,
You know,
I want to knock it all the way down to a 5.
I had to. I had to.
I could agree with that score though. So like
Create
But
margin. Yes.
I do want to, because Kyle busted my balls. I'm wearing a DC Superman shirt, and the reason why, Henry Cavill.
Superman sucks.
Yeah, I agree. I do like Henry as Superman,
He's great.
but not until it all comes together. Like once he has a supporting cast around him, with Batman, with Wonder Woman, with all that, he's a much better character.
So Justice League.
So Justice League, basically.
I was
So
gonna say,
what?
don't be saying Batman vs Superman because that movie sucks.
Yeah, that wasn't great, but I liked him better in that than when he was by himself
In Man of Steel.
in Man of Steel. So, that's why I kind of wore this, because the Hulk by itself reminded me of the Superman Man of Steel, where it was literally by yourself. The character development was actually better in Man of Steel than in Hulk.
Man of Steel is better than this.
But-
Much better film than
But
this
it just
movie.
reminded me where you need this. This isn't someone like Iron Man or Captain America where you can have your own movie, in my opinion.
He's a supporting cast.
It's a
member.
supporting cast guy. It really is. Especially because the Hulk has no character when he becomes the Hulk. He's really just Hulk smash.
He's a monster. Yeah.
So it's, that's why I kind of wore this, to kind of, connect it a little bit as to how I felt about them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's our review of Hulk. So we tried for a shorter video. I'm pretty sure this is not a shorter video.
Yeah, it's
but,
garbage. Watch it if you get time. Don't if you
Hit
don't
that
have time.
subscribe button. Subscribe.
Yes, please subscribe. But yeah, thank you for anyone who joined us for
I'll
Iron
get better
Man. We got Hulk here. We're going to be doing Iron Man next week. Iron Man 2, I should say. And so we'll be recording that and reviewing that. And then as the MCU goes along, we'll get to better and better movies. So I think this is a low point, but I think we're excited because we got definitely much better movies to look forward to.
Iron Man 2 is going to be awesome.
Even Iron Man 2, yeah, I know a lot of people shit on that movie, but Iron Man 2 I think is going to be much better than this movie. So we'll see, but check us out next week for that review, and until next time.
Yep, Hulk smash.